Hi guys. All right, so this is my third time attempting to make this, um, but I'm going to get it out there. I've been called to share a little bit of my story. I think it's time, and in hopes to maybe somebody out there will resonate. Just basically about my awakening journey, some of the hardships I went through, which led to beautiful transformations. But if I can do it, you can do it. And I just thought that this might help someone out there. So I want to thank each and every one of you for coming along for this ride. It's not going to be all butterflies and rainbows and daisies. I had to go through the dark to get to the light. The light is the truth. Let there be light. Let the truth set you free. All of those things. That's part of it. So it might be a little triggering for some of you, but triggers are medicine. And so you can work with that. This is, my personal experience. So you don't have to agree with me at all. It doesn't matter. I'm just sharing. I'm just sharing my story. I've always I've dealt with a lot of hardships in my life, since I was a child, lots and lots of hardships, and gone through lots of transformations. What I didn't know was that all of those, all those times dealing with those hardships were preparing me for these moments, for my awakening journey, and for the future moving forward. So, um, they were actually blessings. All of the things that I've dealt with were actually blessings because they helped me prepare, help me grow my strength and my resolve. So anyway, I will go ahead and share a little bit. I'll just start with me and Aaron. We actually met in our 20s, and it didn't work out. We had lots more lessons and relationships to go through, basically, before it was going to be our time. We started talking again in 2015. He was getting over a bad relationship, and I was giving him some counsel and some solace, which I tend to do sometimes. I've been known to be a counselor in my life, so I was doing that for him. And, while talking to him, I was learning that he was a genuine person and that he had a really big heart and that we shared similar values and he wanted a family. And I just kept having the pull for us to start something and that we would make a great team. It actually didn't make much sense. It didn't make much sense at all. But a lot of times in this life, I have listened to my intuition, and there's a lot of times I haven't. And so, you know, I've learned lessons from both. We did start dating, and things started going really quickly. He was actually a good role model for my children. So I've had a lot of people in the past that they didn't fit the bill, and they weren't good role models for my kids. Before I knew it, I was pregnant. It was unplanned, but it was a happy surprise. Aaron was always afraid to have a child with seizures. But if you know anything about soul growth and walking the path here on earth, um, a lot of the things that we fear, we actually bring towards us because we are supposed to work those things out here in this lifetime and overcome. Um, he had epilepsy. That's why. So he had epilepsy as a child. It was never as bad as Scarlett's, but he had to go on different drugs and lots of medical things, and lots of trials and tribulations in his life. But overall, his were far more controlled. And as he got older, way more controlled. I mean, like the first 5 years we were together, I didn't know of him having a seizure. And I didn't know much about seizures myself. Um, After a mostly normal pregnancy, Scarlett Lillian Force was born in 2016. She came in very feisty. She was a fireball. I went to the hospital. This was before my awakening. Great news. So I was going to have a normal hospital, but I didn't have any drugs. I didn't have time. She came in very fast, and the doctor hardly even had time to catch her. So, but she had to go through the birth portal. That was very important. She smiled and was very social early on, and our bond was immediate. I fiercely loved all my children, all my babies, but with her, there was something different. Like it was like I knew that I needed to protect her. And it was true. It was absolutely true. So I did what most mamas do. I took her to the doctor to get her 3-month things. With all my children, every single time my mama was screaming at me, like, don't hurt my baby, don't hurt my God. My perfect child made by God, like, don't. That's what was screaming from the inside. But, we are told a different story here on this planet, and we were told that, health is to be injected. And so I listened to, society, to the experts, whatever. That night, my oldest daughter was changing her diaper, and she started making these noises and these movements, and I thought she had the hiccups at first, and then it took me a minute to put 2 and 2 together and realize what was going on. I had heard stories about febrile seizures after these things, and then, obviously Aaron had the epilepsy, so I called 911. These are moments that you can't really put into words. It is pure fear and terror. Your soul actually leaves your body sometimes because it's a whole lot to deal with. She seized for 15 to 20 minutes the first time, and she was loaded with lots and lots of drugs. Looking back, it's a wonder that her little body went through so much turbulence, but now I know that her spirit is very fierce. Her life force is super strong. The second time she had a seizure, it was her 6-month things. This time it was 40 minutes, and she got an epilepsy diagnosis and put on a medication. The first time they said febrile seizure. The second time they said this is epilepsy. The third time is at her 9-month things. I actually remember this vividly because it was during a solar eclipse, the big solar eclipse in 2017. I think it was around August. I was actually working in St. Louis. Her hospital was in St. Louis. So, this one was an hour long. She was life flighted to Cardinal Glennon Hospital, and she was put in a PICU. I remember the nurses asking me if we had done anything different, whatever. And I told them that she had got those that day. And they all just looked at each other. They gave each other these knowing looks. They gave each other these knowing glances. And I knew that they see this all the time. And these are just moments in time you don't forget. They literally leave an imprint on your very being and start to change the way you look at the world. At this time, they do genetic testing and say it's a catastrophic lifelong syndrome called Dravet syndrome. That was her diagnosis, and I only call it that because I've learned so much more than that. So, unfortunately, things got a lot worse before they got better, but we no longer gave her any of those things. I researched day and night. At work, in between calls, I would research, and I saw what society said. I saw what they told you to do, and I learned that it wasn't the truth, that it was actually harmful. So nobody will believe you, though. So this was all prior to, the COVID fiasco. Also, her second seizure was done I had found her in the middle of the night. I woke up and once again thought she was hiccuping, and found out she was seizing. There's part of me that wonders if it was a choice point in my soul. If I wouldn't have woken up, she could have passed away that night. They would have called it SIDS. Potentially, this happens to a lot of babies. In any event, I was in it for the long haul, and so is she. So that's not what this journey was about, and that's not what was going to happen. At this point, she is on 2 meds and then on 3. One of the meds they actually give her is a benzo, which actually causes seizures in normal people that try to withdraw from it. So in our desperation and turbulence and fear, we were kind of put on these things that weren't for our best interest. And, now we have to deal with the repercussions of that. But that's just part of the journey, I guess. She also had a rescue medication that we were supposed to administer rectally if she had a seizure longer than 5 minutes. And it was just such a crock of shit because most of the time it wouldn't work. And we would still have to call for an ambulance. We had to administer this when we were out in public in front of other people, it just felt so terrorizing and violating to my child's body. And ass backwards, just so ass backwards. Like, yeah, we had so many ER trips for prolonged seizures, I couldn't even tell you now. Somehow I still managed a job on little to no sleep, and I was having lots of nightmares. In one of the nightmares, an evil entity, this woman, was driving a car. I was in the front seat and Scarlett was in the back, and she took a bite out of my hand and she said, "You are mine now. You and Scarlett now belong to me." So I was dealing with these other things on the astral realm. I became a helicopter parent and paranoid to extreme degrees. Triggers and dangers were everywhere. I was afraid to shower or do laundry and potentially miss a seizure. I was frightened for my child's life overall, and that was the gist of it, things. I had joined the Dravet parent group on Facebook. It was treacherous. It was mostly parents going back and forth, trying to figure out med dosages and what works and what doesn't work. And is this a seizure? Is this not a seizure? Because they didn't get the answers they were looking for from the doctors. The doctors didn't really know. And all the kids were kind of lab rats. I hate to say it, but it's true. It was all these parents were just in dire straits too. So I don't judge anyone's journey, not at all. Not at all. I just saw it for what it was, and it just felt so heavy. There were some positive uplifts and uplifting posts, but overall, it just brought me down. We did visit a Dravet specialist in Chicago. She turned out to be not so pleasant. We took a day drive there. Scarlett was like 2.5 or something. So she had lots of excess energy and stuff, and we went there, and you would think she would be more empathetic being a specialist and all, but she was very put off for the fact that my child was flighty and kind of all over the place, even to the extent that it just surprises me because that is supposed to be a comorbidity of Dravet syndrome, ADHD, and hyperactivity. She was very cold and robotic, though. We told her that we were no longer giving these things, and she said, "Well, you'll have to do it in the future." And I was like, "I don't think you know who you're talking to." So there was that. And then she was telling us about a protocol they were developing that was to inject RNA sequencing or whatever into the child's spine to help cure the disease. That was just a no-go for me. A lot of the things they said would help didn't make sense to me. Brain surgery, like my child's already having issues in her brain, so we're going to take pieces of it out. Or an implant to help the vagal nerve to stimulate it. I get the science behind it, but you can literally do that naturally by toning and humming and tapping and things of that nature. Like, no, it wasn't for us. Anyway, at the end of the appointment, some college students from one of the colleges up there that were in the genetics department came to us and basically told me that Scarlett had a worst case scenario and that she wouldn't thrive, all doom and gloom. So, but and then they wanted to they asked for permission to tamper with and to experiment with my child's DNA and Aaron's. It was a hard no in my soul. I didn't tell them at that time because I was going to talk to Aaron about it, but it was a big fat no. Because our DNA is our life force. We kept an eye on my child via video monitor, and she slept with me or us. Most of the time I couldn't fall asleep until I knew she was asleep, and her sleep suffered a lot because she had lots of energy. She was very hyperactive, and sometimes her and Aaron would take a nap in the day. So I was literally running on little to no sleep most of the time. We did have 2 foundations help us with a couple monitors. We got an infant monitor, which basically is a mat that goes under the mattress that's supposed to detect movement. Unfortunately, the thing would go off all the time when she would just roll over and stuff. She never really had night seizures anyway. Plus, she would have silent seizures, so it wouldn't detect that anyway. But it was something that we did for a while. We also got a pulse guard from England. It was an England-made device. It was basically this tablet thing that hooked up to a pulse ox that we put on her finger or her toe or her ankle that was supposed to measure her oxygen and her heart rate. Because when you have a seizure, your O2 goes down and your heart rate goes way up. It it always false alarmed. It disconnected all the time. It wasn't what it was cracked up to be. Um, what else? She also got a cooling vest, which we still use to this day on warm days. It only lasts for a little bit, but it does give her an opportunity to maybe enjoy something for, 30 minutes that she wouldn't have had an opportunity to potentially enjoy before, because heat can be a big trigger for her. So, looking back on photos from that time, we are all very pale, very, very pale, and with droopy eyes, and we're just absolutely spent. We spent our days inside in the summer, for fear of going outside because she would have these hour-long seizures. So, like, my bones were cold from the air conditioning and not getting any sun and not getting enough activity, and our health was suffering because of it. All of us, all of us. I did get a point in my life where I was in constant fight or flight. My adrenals were shut at work. If my cell phone would go off, I would immediately jump into terror because I associated the ringtone with a seizure. Anytime I heard an ambulance, the same thing. I had to change the ringtone on my phone. I went to the bathroom one time and a coworker jumped out and surprised me, and I literally just burst into tears. Like, that's how bad I was. And she didn't get it. She didn't get it, what I was going through. She didn't understand. But it was really like I had been to war. The chronic PTSD was real, absolutely real. At lunch, I would run to the park and sit in the sun and under a tree. I didn't even know what I was doing, but instinctually, I was trying to ground and I was trying to heal myself. Looking back, I see that now. There's so many stories I could tell, but the gist is I was absolutely spent. I started breaking down. The fear gripped me, and it was now affecting me spiritually, physically, and psychologically. I quit my job. I was so worried about how we were going to make it. I saw doctors because I kept having these sensations in my body, and my hair was falling out, and I was cold all the time. And the doctors found nothing wrong with me. But to me now, it's obvious what was wrong. I had to take back control of my life. So I looked to God. I started praying. I started writing and doing affirmations. I started journaling. I'm sorry, it gets a little emotional. I visited a girl I went to high school with who practiced Reiki, and I was really drawn to it. And she worked on me a few times, which I'm so grateful for. The first time I was so ungrounded. That night I came home and I tried to go to sleep, and I had violent images flashing in my head. And I ran to the bathroom and I threw up blood. I realize now I was purging. I was purging a lot of heavy, dense energy and, potentially things around me that were feeding off of the fact that I was in fear all the time. Um, Another night, I was gripped with fear. I asked God for help. All of a sudden, I was surrounded with white light, and all around, a calm and loving feeling took over and held me. It was a miracle. I was starting to see that these things were real, that God, angels, the goodness was real. It was just as real as the dark. I was spiritually awakening and learning about energy, healing, and self love. We took Scarlett to a functional medical team and learned so much and completely changed so many habits in eating and drinking, and toxic ingredients, et cetera, et cetera. It was a long journey. It was hard. It was daunting to make these changes and expensive, but it was worth it. I started using a metal detox zeolite on Scarlett. This was when her seizures started shortening significantly. Also, her speech improved. Within a week, I noticed her speech getting better. It wasn't a coincidence. We started looking at more natural remedies, started going outside more, grounding, and getting more sunshine. Um, I was connecting with my daughter on in a more relaxed manner and taking care of myself at the same time. We were able to take her outside and counterbalance the heat of the sun with water, getting her in water, getting those little play pools outside and stuff. Things started improving. We didn't need to use the rescue medications anymore. We were no longer having to call 911. I was getting more secure and confident in her caregiving, and when she'd have a seizure, I wouldn't leave my body. I would remain strong, loving, and present. I'd still cry sometimes afterwards for the release, but I was still so grateful we were seeing improvements. Scarlett would quickly recover after a sleep and back to her old self again. Were the seizures really the enemy here, or a symptom of the toxins or something else? The medical community tell you they are detrimental and to suppress them at all costs. But what if the body is doing exactly what it's supposed to do? What if there are no mistakes? What if seizures are energetic upgrades? What if they allow more light to come into the body? What if all the meds do is suppress the light? I don't have all the answers. These things are up for discussion, but I know from my vantage point research, living this life, dot connecting, I've gained far more wisdom than I could have ever imagined. I also know that the more I learn, the less I know. So I'm still learning. I know for one, sacred frankincense essential oil can sometimes assist in stopping a seizure. This has happened. I've used this, and this has happened many times with Scarlett. Yes, the very oil that they gave the baby Jesus. A coincidence? I think not. I know there are tons of parents searching and trying new things because the medical community has failed them. Things such as grounding mats, and sheets, sacred cranial therapy, chiropractic care, keto diets, paleo diets, herbs and supplements, red light therapy, equine therapy, swimming with the dolphins, parasite cleanses, massage, floral essences, Reiki, spiritual practices and assistance, sound healing. These are the things, these are the healings of the future. These are the things that are going to assist us moving forward. But I will not sit here and claim to have all the answers. I also believe that there can be multiple paths to similar conclusions. I believe we are waking from a deep slumber. I believe my youngest daughter was the catalyst to my awakening journey. In fact, I know this. Her soul signed up for a big mission, and her heart is pure gold. The more I've let go of the need to control, and the more I remain disciplined but allow joy and love to replace all those fears, the better our lives get. I wanted to share a few cool experiences really quick as well. Some positive amongst the dark, I suppose. One cool experience I encountered was when I was on a work break. I went and I laid down on a couch and I was just trying to mellow. I was trying to chill out and stuff. And I laid there and I started thinking about what it would be like to have a seizure. Like in my third eye, I saw what looks like inside a brain and then light synapses like passing back and forth, but very quickly, more quickly than normal. 5 minutes later, I got a phone call that Scarlett had had a seizure and she was okay. I was telepathically connecting to my daughter at that time. I started learning more about how these telepathic connections work with our loved ones. And it's a real thing. Another time, let's see. Oh, so later, a few years ago, after Scarlett had a seizure, I was laying in bed with her. And I got a download either from her or us connecting or whatever it was in my third eye. And basically, I don't know if you've ever seen this before. It's kind of graphic, kind of weird, but at the same time, it's tarantula. Have you ever seen a tarantula molt? It almost looks like it's having a seizure. It's molting and taking its skin off or whatever. So I saw this, but replacing the spider with a turtle. Scarlett was the turtle. And basically, it was showing me that, she was molting, she was changing, she was upgrading, she was transforming. That's what these seizures were doing for her. And it just helped put the pictures together so better. I didn't even know that turtles molted until, after I looked this up. I started trusting in myself more. I started trusting in, these messages that I was receiving and stuff. Looking at my daughter now, it's true. It's just all true. And there's so many wonders in the world that, we're just learning and picking up on. And I think it's actually absolutely beautiful. But, you know, just to clarify, it wasn't until I energetically disconnected from my child's diagnosis, the community, the foundation, the search for a cure, the t-shirts, the Google definition, and what the experts said, was I able to take my power back, her power back, and the power back of my family. We call the shots with God, in alignment with God. We call the shots. I know so many of you have heard of miracles happening where the doctor says, oh, you only have this long to live, or this, that, and the other. You don't have to take that as a absolute definite. Not saying that it never is, but God is always working miracles, always. And you are not your diagnosis. You are a powerful life force, a spark, a fractal essence of God. Don't ever forget who you are, what you're made of, or where you come from. We all have the power to take our power back. We are creators of our story. For more uplifting inspiration, please read my book, Pearl and Marigold, A Tale of Two Friends. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'm going to go get some tissues. Take care.